Welcome to part 2 of our series on what is church membership. In the first part, we learned that Jesus called his followers to live and work together in intentional community, that this was an essential part of what it meant to be a follower of Jesus Christ. Today, we're going to start looking at why, and we're going to look at teamwork, 3 ways in which we can team together to accomplish God's work in this world. There's a lot to do. And when we look at what God calls us to accomplish in his world, it could be absolutely overwhelming. But if we each look at ourselves as part of the whole, and we look at the time that each of us have to contribute, the old saying is that many hands make light work. And so we can offer whatever time that we have, and you may have more time or less time, depending on your stage of life and what's going on, and that's fine. But give the time that you can. And not only will we accomplish more than we could individually, but we will find joy and fellowship in serving together and working alongside one another. Not only do we have our time, but we have our talents, the gifts and skills that God has given us. You have interests, you have personality, you have job skills or other skills that you have learned along the way. You have spiritual gifts that God has given you, and we'll talk more about that next time. And God makes us different on purpose. It is good. We're not all supposed to be the same, and we don't all do the same thing. In 1 Corinthians 12, Paul says this. He says, God has arranged the parts in the body, every one of them, just as he wanted them to be. If they were all one part, where would the body be? As it is, there are many parts, but one body. So you may not have the same job or skills or talents or abilities as someone else, and that's a good thing because God has something specific for you. God has put you together in a unique way to contribute to his church. In Ephesians 4, Paul says this. He says, for in Christ, the whole body, joined and held together by every supporting ligament, grows and builds itself up in love as each part does its work. You see, when you pull yourself out of the church, when you try to go it alone, when you don't contribute to a church, that means that there is a hole in that church that you were meant to fill, and it is not going to be as effective as it would be if you took the place that God had given you and contributed your skills and interests and personality and talents to that church. So not only do we have our time and our talents, we also have our tithes and our resources. God gives us money and resources that we pool together, again, to accomplish his work in this world. In Acts chapter 2, we're told that all believers were together and had everything in common. Selling their possessions and goods, they gave to anyone as he had need. They supported one another, and when someone had a need, they filled it. In Acts chapter 4, we see the same thing where it says all believers were one in heart and mind. No one claimed they had any of his own possessions was his own, but they shared everything they had. And as a result, there were no needy persons among them. It says from time to time, those who owned lands or houses sold them, brought the money from the sales and put it at the apostles' feet, and it was distributed to anyone as he had need. So we pool our resources together to meet each other's needs. Sometimes we do it to meet needs outside of our church. We do it to maintain facilities that we can meet together for training and for worship. We do it to pay salaries of staff members who are able to give extra time and extra energy for training and for training of others. But we pool our resources together to accomplish his work in this world. And so you have time, you have talents, and you have tithes. And you can put all those together to take your place in the church. And through our teamwork, we can accomplish his work in this world. And that is what a church member does. And so I hope you'll join us next week when we talk specifically about how God has given you spiritual gifts to accomplish his work through the church. We'll see you then.